In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Please note the explicit content indicator. This means that I use adult language. I do not speak in a humorless, public radio hushed monotone. I am excited and enthusiastic about the information that I present and the topics I discuss. You will hear ice rattle in my glass throughout the show. On the show, I joke about bodily functions, sex acts, religion, and politics. The topics may seem random or scattered through the back catalog. A list of show topics in chronological order is provided on the featured topic link at Advertise.com. If any of these issues might trigger you, this might not be the podcast for you, and I wish you good luck finding a show more to your liking. It's that time again. The music is low. The party is over. The fire is dying down, and all the ordinary people passed out long ago. Now we are the only ones left. Hey everybody, it's John. Oh, what a week. I'm over 24 hours into my 48-hour fast for this week. If you're playing along at home, it's Thursday evening. Did a little episode here with the host of Flatline to Beatline, a gentleman by the name of Night Shayde. So I hope you enjoy the show. We talk about paganism, heathenism, all witchcraft, get into a lot of stuff that frankly I haven't really talked a lot about on the show. So it was kind of a cool opportunity to talk to a gentleman who's into it deep. So we have that, and before we go ahead and get into it, please raise your glass. My glass is full of very boring, uninteresting liquid this week. Like I said, I'm into this fast business, so raise your glass to the sky and thank our Patreon and Subscribe Star supporters. Here's to staying positive but testing negative. Here's to you. Thank you all for your support, and thank you for listening.
This call is being recorded.
All right. Okay, so on the phone we have the host of Flatline to Beatline, a guy by the name of Night Shayde. Night Shayde, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thank you. So we talk about a lot of weird shit on my show, and I started looking through, and I don't really have like any solid pagan stuff. So I was like, I know just the guy who can help me with that. So, so thank you very much. And so I'm gonna just ask you to start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like you said, I'm known by the moniker of Night Shayde. I host a podcast called Flatline and Beatline. I am a traditional witch and a tribalist heathen. I've been practicing traditional witchcraft for over 31 years. And I've been a heathen actually for the past almost 2 years, as I was called by the gods and goddesses. I'm a hard polytheist, and I'm also a father, so I think that sums it up.
Okay. Were you raised in a religious environment?
Not really. I was, baptized Roman Catholic, did First Communion, didn't do confirmation. I did the Latin masses and the midnight masses and all that. It wasn't forced upon us, but I was raised in a military family, so that kind of went hand in hand. So you just did what you were told to do and didn't question it. But no, I studied religions all my life, practiced many religions, trying to understand them better, but it was never forced on me, no.
All right. When you say you got called by the gods and goddesses, what was that experience like when it happened to you?
Well, I wasn't a hard polytheist until February 20th, 2018. I was an atheist. In fact, I was a very hard line atheist. Many atheists who, if they listen to your show, people like Richard Dawkins and Aaron Ra and Sam Harris, they were religious fanatics compared to how hardline atheist I was. And the reason why I became a hard polytheist is I had my first out-of-body experience and didn't know I was having one, and I haven't had one since. But I realized I was having one when I was floating. And then I heard stomping in my daughter's nursery, and what came out was a beast, a primordial being, horned beast, had goat legs, things like that. Come to find out, in summary, it was Azazel, and Azazel is my youngest daughter's guardian. Right then and there, I became a hard polytheist. But I had dreams after that from Thor and Frigg, things like this. And anyone who knows me, very skeptical, very analytical. So I didn't take it like a grain of salt. And when I came out and said that I had these experiences, very close friends of mine knew I wasn't bullshitting. It shocked me. It shocked me. And I had this call towards heathenry in June of 2018 that I could not control. So I just became a devotee of Frigg and Thor, just living a normal heathen life, and had to understand what heathenry really is besides, the Viking TV shows and things like that.
Okay, so I'm going to hold you off on the heathenry stuff because we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I think at first we need to understand a difference between soft polytheism and hard polytheism. I think that the way that I understand it is the soft polytheism is kind of like a Hindu understanding, they're all aspects of one God. Is that right? Is that anywhere near being correct?
Well, the issue of hard and soft polytheism is about 35 years old. If you go back to those who have been polytheists for a very long time, they just knew polytheism. That was it. But soft polytheism, just picture this, a diamond. And a diamond has many faces. And these deities, gods, goddesses of whichever pantheon from whichever culture are just facets or faces or aspects of that one primordial source, that diamond, that universal source. And then hard polytheism, like myself, we believe they are real individuals, separate, have their own characteristics, and they are physical beings and not archetypes. So, okay. In essence, that's the general sum of it.
Okay, very, very nicely put. Now, tell me a little bit about your podcast. It is serves a pretty niche audience, and I haven't really found anything out there specifically like it. It's like your mission statement is pretty on point for what it is you do. I was hoping that you could kind of tell us about it, where you got the idea for it, and why you started podcasting.
Well, actually, you're right. It is very unique, and unbeknownst to me, when I did start it in August of 2019, I did not know it was the only one of its kind. Technically, what started it is I'm a small business owner. I'm a tarot reader, an intuitive tarot reader, and I had this feeling like there's got to be other ways for people to get their names out there in a saturated market, and I wasn't one for a limelight position, so I just had this feeling I had to do it. And then podcasting hit me, and I was like, oh, okay. So I spent an hour trying to think of a name. And as a devotee to Frigg, I asked for her advice. And within a minute and a half, Flatline to Beatline's name came around. And so that's what it was. So the podcast is a weekly podcast that showcases pagan and or witch business owners, authors, artists, musicians, and content creators who are trying to get their name out there, who in a saturated market, who don't juxtapose to many podcasts who only focus on the big names. I do the opposite. I focus on the ones who have like 10 views on their YouTube channel, who have 12 followers on Twitter, or has that small Etsy store nobody pays attention to. My podcast is a platform for those voices, those people to say, hey, I'm here too. Now, yes, do I have big names coming up on my podcast? Yes, I do. But it will be not only to get people's attention to the podcast, but to ask them, hey, what is your advice for those just starting out, maybe writing a book or just starting out with their business? What advice can you give them? So that is the primal focus of my podcast, is to help those get their name out there. In addition, it's not like every other podcast that, oh, you just filled the slot and now I'm done with you. No, I don't. I stay in communication with them. I retweet their stuff. I remind all my followers and listeners, hey, go check these people. I'll go check this person out. Hey, you want a good book to read? I just interviewed this author, 3 months ago. Go check her out. So that's what I do. Why? Because I actually give a shit. I actually care and I want to see them succeed. So yes, every guest that I have on has to be a pagan and or witch. And what I mean by pagan is someone who identifies either as a pagan, a Luciferian, a Satanist, a druid, or a heathen. If they do not fall into, and they can also just be a witch, whether they're a polytheist or atheist witch, it doesn't matter. If they don't fall into this category, they don't come on my show. And I get requests all the time to have people come on. I'm like, no, you don't fall in this category. I can't help you. So, and I've even turned sponsors down because I didn't believe in their stuff. I didn't think it would fit my community, so I told them to bugger off. So I'm pretty strict in protecting my own.
Yeah, and I think that you're doing a service to your community by kind of being that, kind of blocking force, only letting the stuff that will serve them come in,
Oh, no, absolutely. I think it's imperative. And I think the greatest comment that I've ever gotten or compliment really was, many people are seeing my podcast as a resource in the pagan and witch communities. And to me, that's worth more than $1 trillion handed to me. I'd rather have that compliment than $1 trillion handed to me. So it's humbling to be able to speak to so many people, make so many connections, and not, kind of being a vanguard in a way, but not so much. I'm just there to talk to people and have fun, and hopefully they'll become successful. And every single one of my guests have had small to moderate success, and it keeps growing little by little as the podcast grows.
It's awesome, man. Congratulations on that, by the way.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so I started listening to your show, and I was kind of avalanched because, so I've mentioned on my show many times, I'm married to a witch. She's a solitary practitioner. And when I talk to her about her practice, or when, I'm watching her do her stuff or whatever, a lot of her philosophy is kind of do what feels right. There's no such thing as a line, you have to kind of like go and find your own way how to do stuff. And when I start listening to your show, this is not bagging on anybody, but I realized that there were a lot of lines in the Wiccan, witch, pagan community. Is that fair to say?
There are, of course, I don't identify as a Wiccan, but yes, you will have gatekeepers, people who say, hey, you can't be a witch because of this. You're right, you're wrong. This constant battling that goes on. And that is simply because, now it's been going on for a very long time, but it's because pagans and witches are on the rise. The matriarchy is coming around, the patriarchy is starting to fall. And with that growing span of people comes different opinions. And you have individuals like like myself who have been practicing for decades saying, okay, kids, it's time to stop playing games. We're on the same side, but really you have the biggest issues a lot with politics and a lot with everything, but your wife is correct. To each their own. What truly does resonate with that person, and as long as that makes them feel good and they're not remaining static, that their beliefs remain fluid, their ideas remain fluid, that's all that matters. And yes, there are times where there are right and wrong ways. There's no doubt about that. And I'm sure your wife and I can have a pretty good conversation on witchcraft and practicing witchcraft.
Yeah. So would you feel comfortable fielding some questions about some of these different things, like the difference between a neo-pagan and a pagan, or the difference between a Wiccan or witchcraft from your point of view?
Yeah, sure. They're all at me.
Okay, so what's the difference between I don't know if it's a traditional pagan or a pagan and a neo-pagan?
Well, technically, if you're living today, you're a neo-pagan. That's just that's just a fact. Okay, because people who practice like heathenry. Okay, we're not real Vikings. Okay, we have indoor plumbing and we have electricity and we have the internet. Right? So everyone living today is a neo-pagan. It doesn't matter. But really, that pagan, neo-pagan, that's not really an issue. Really, what it comes down to, especially in the Wiccan community, you have traditional Wiccans and neo-Wiccans. All right, your traditional Wiccans follow those older paths like Gardnerians, Alexandrians, etc., that do a little bit different. They're not all love and light. They're not fluffy bunnies or fluffers. They will curse and hex and vex and cross. Your more neo ones, not all of them, but a lot of them are all love and light, and I don't do any of this. And not all Wiccans practice witchcraft. All right.
Okay.
So balanced out with that and traditional witches. Traditional witches, yes, we kind of have ethics, but hey, you fuck with us, we're going to tear you apart. It's up to us. We have no rules. We just do what we got to do. But yes, we have ethics.
I see. So, one of the things that we talk about here on my show, especially when we're talking about the older books, is we kind of come down hard on like the new ager stuff. Is that kind of like the fluffy bunnies that you're talking about? Is that a fair distinction?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, somebody could be practicing for 40 years, and if they're all sparkles and rainbows and glitter and shit, then, they're very imbalanced. But to really understand what a witch is, you have to actually understand what witchcraft is. And that's what so many people overlook, is what is witchcraft. And
okay.
Do you want me to describe it for you?
Yeah, well, the next thing I was going to ask you, maybe you could roll it up, is the difference between Wiccan and witchcraft.
Well, okay. The vast majority of Wiccans practice witchcraft. All right. And then you have, and they have their dogma, they have their rules, and they keep saying, and ye harm none, do what you will. You know what? People don't understand the rest of that. But technically, what witchcraft is, it's an art, it's a science, it's a trade, it's a skill that takes a lifetime, if not lifetimes, to master. It is balance between light and dark. Compare it to nature. Nature has a life-giving aspect, and it has a destruction aspect. That's what witchcraft is, and a true witch will walk the crooked path. He or she will know how to heal and hurt. It will embrace the darker side and the lighter side, and I don't mean darker side is demonic or anything like that. That can be part of it, but usually the darker side of witchcraft is shadow working, looking at oneself and seeing what they don't like about themselves, what they fear, facing those fear. And you will have these fluffy bunnies, or kind of like the hippie, which is kind of a thing, of saying, oh no, I'm too scared to look into my own self and see what I don't like. All right. So that's kind of a general breakdown in simple terms.
All right. So is it your point of view that like Wiccan is kind of like the gateway drug into some of these other things? Like, is there kind of like not a formalized like graduation, but something more of like an evolution? Like most folks that start in Wicca kind of move on to find like paganism or witchcraft.
You will have people who go into Wicca starting out and then leave. And you will have some that will stay in there for their whole lives. To say it's Wicca is a beautiful religion. I know amazing Wiccans. I won't say that Wicca is a stepping stone or pre-graduate stage. But you will find a lot of people don't like the whole dogmatic thing, and they will leave that and go and practice voodoo, hoodoo. They'll practice traditional witchcraft, or they'll start embodying all these different practices into one. So, I mean, that's what it all comes down to. And of course, majority of Wiccans, I'd say 99% of them, practice witchcraft. So to decipher those two or to put them against one another is actually wrong, because yes, every witch is not a Wiccan, but the vast majority of Wiccans are witches.
Okay, it's complicated. It's hard for me to grasp. Is there another, like, the Wiccan would be like a parishioner, and the witch would be like a priestess? Is that a fair way to?
No. A Wiccan, Gerald Gardner started that Wicca movement with Dorian Valiente and Alex Sanders and Raymond Buckland and things like this. It's more of a religion, all right? The U.S. military, for example, recognizes Wicca as a formalized religion. They don't recognize witchcraft as a religion, okay, because witchcraft is a practice. It's not a religion. It's a science. It's an art. Wicca is a religion.
I see. I think I got it. Okay, so you mentioned heathenry before. I was wondering if we could kind of talk about that. How did you find your way into heathenry?
Well, like I said before, I just had this really strong pull towards it, and I tried to fight as much as I could, but I couldn't do it. And then I started having visions of Thor and Frigg and Freya. And no, I don't drink alcohol. No, I don't do drugs. And no, I don't have mental illnesses. I physically actually had these premonitions, not just, lucid dreams. And I was just called to it. And then it just came more and more and more as it went on. And so I just embraced it and just started living that life and honoring the gods and goddesses, and just started studying, because heathenry is a religion with a lot of homework. And anyone will tell you who's a heathen, it's a lot of homework. You're studying a lot with very little resources, honestly. Are you a pagan and or witch, business owner, author, artist, musician, or content creator wanting to get your name out there? Then Flatline to Beatline is a podcast created especially for you. It is a interview-style business podcast with an edge. You can reach me on Twitter at F2B Podcast and allow Flatline to Beatline help you break through the noise.
So this month on the Fulgar Correspondentia, just a fancy word for the mailing list. Since we're heading into the fourth quarter of our Genesis series, there's a little brief Genesis timeline, according to me, that's up there. Also, since we are going to be getting into Jacob and Esau, I finally sat down and started to work on a map of the wrong son, the wrong blessing idea that we've been running into pretty much this whole Genesis thing. Sat down and worked out some pretty cool details, so I think it's pretty cool. Also, as always, you can look at my latest up-to-date version of the tarot cards that I'm designing. All that if you just sign into the mailing list, all that bonus stuff. But the Fellowcraft episode on the Patreon and Subscribe Star this month, we're starting to look at and dissect the work of Milton William Cooper in an episode entitled The UFO Conspiracy Part 1.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
Okay, so when you're talking about heathenry, it sounds like you're talking about like kind of like a Norse or like Germanic. I don't want to say mythology, a Norse or Germanic kind of pantheon that you're looking at.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're looking usually from the Scandinavian islands or countries. Sorry, Scandinavian countries. So you're looking at, everybody knows Marvel, right? Odin and Thor and Loki and Frigg and Freya. Right, but there's also other ones like Freyr and Baldur and other ones like this. Right, so you have this large pantheon that are Norse, Germanic, etc. But there's a lot of controversy amongst the scholars as far as certain names. But I mean, compare that to the Minoans and the Greek mythology, where the Greeks and the Romans stole a lot of the mythology from surrounding territories. So, but yeah, that's essentially the family tree or the deities within Norse pantheon, because there's a lot more. You have the Asa and the Vanya and the Jotnar and things of this nature.
Yeah, this goes like back to like Guido List and Wotanism and stuff like that. Is that correct? Like
Wotanism, that's a different thing. Well, people have to understand that there's three categories of heathens. You have universalist, tribalist, and focused. Okay, first of all, focused. The vast majority of them are white supremacists. They're very exclusive. You have to be white and you have to come from the Scandinavian countries to practice, which in my opinion, the vast majority of opinion of heathens is bullshit. Universalist heathenry is kind of like wicked true. That's kind of what they call it. Is, hey, come in, everybody's included. You can do whatever you want. Hell, you can even make Odin black. Go ahead, be my guest, or Freya Chinese. Yeah, I don't deal with that shit. I'm a tribalist, meaning, hey, anybody can practice it. Hey, it's all good. But there's rules to follow. There's certain things you have to do. So a tribal setting. So it's very communal in a sense. So if people understand those three aspects of heathenry, then they can venture into it. So Wotanism has a lot of negative connotations to it, as skinheads and neo-Nazis and even Hitler stole our Norse symbols. And any time that law enforcement sees, maybe the black wheel or anything else, the black sun and things like this, oh, you're a white supremacist, and it's not true. And it's a shame that our symbols were stolen by these morons.
For sure. Do you have anything else that you want to add about heathenism?
Well, no, heathenry it's really awesome. It's just a lot of studying, and I encourage everyone to look into it. And don't look at the Norse deities as from a Marvel standpoint, because they're not comic book heroes and they're not anything like that. They are true deities that are honored and worshipped through many, many, many centuries.
So when you say that there's a lot of homework and a lot of studying, what kind of texts are you looking at?
Well, it's kind of hard. Most heathens will look at the Prose Edda and the Poetic Edda. Of course, the Poetic Edda was Christianized, really. But there's very little context, so we rely on scholars like Dr. Jackson Crawford, who's not even a heathen. He's actually, I believe, a Christian. But he is very well respected, very well known, translates the Old Norse thing. So we're learning from those books and other scholars like Judith Jersh and things like that, Kat Sherman, these scholars that have spent their life translating the text and trying to help us understand how things go. Because if you look at Old Norse, that's not an easy language. That's very, very complicated. Then, when you're starting to learn, if you learn the basics like the younger and elder Futhark, the letters like Dagas and Thurazaz and things like that, then you start working with things to better understand, then you're watching people who do have knowledge, especially on YouTube and other podcasts. That's how a lot of people gain their knowledge, and that's all we really have, unless you want to go to university and spend a lot of money taking Norse studies.
Right. Would you? I'm trying to picture. Would you be comfortable talking about your personal practice a little bit, like what you're, if you set up to do a ritual or a worship, like what that might look like?
Well, mine is very simple. I mean, even before I was a heathen, my witchcraft practice was very simple. One and done, 5 minutes and I'm finished. I don't have all day. I'm not a ritualistic nor a ceremonial type of person. But I have Frigg altars to the All-Mother Frigg and to Thor. And each day, the days of the week are actually, Woden's day and Frigg's day, Freya's day, Thor's day, which were changed by the Romans and the Greeks. But I have little small altars. I may light a candle, incense, make basic offerings every day. Especially today is Thursday, it's Thor's day. So he's my patron deity, I'll make an offering to him, and it could be anything. It's what counts is that you're trying and that you're remembering them. You don't have to say, well, I don't know exactly what these deities like, so I'm not going to give them anything. It doesn't matter. It could be an Oreo cookie. Who cares? You're trying, right? That's all that matters. And as long as you remember them, I mean, that's what's most important. It's almost like somebody who's sick and in a hospital, and nobody ever sends them a card except for that one person because they actually cared. They remembered them. So it's almost like that. And we constantly, what's important in heathenry is our deeds, our actions, and our actions speak louder than words. So that's how it works. So my practice is very, very simple, very offerings. I do prayers, stuff like that. Just, I don't always ask for help. I don't ask for anything really at all, unless I really need it. But I just light candles, incense, here you go, and I'm done, in and out. And if I do spell work, I'm done in 5-10 minutes. I don't have all day.
So you've mentioned on your show before about how about you using candle magic. Did I remember that correctly?
Yeah, I do use candle magic, yes.
Okay, so can you talk about that a little bit? Is it about the color of the candle, or where it comes from, or when you burn it, or? Well,
there's a lot, because there's also a line with planetary magic, but with candles, everybody has a different perception, but pretty much if you take a white candle, it's neutral, right? You can use it for anything. A black candle is for protection, or it could be for harm, right? Green is for money. Gold could be for money. Orange could be for, abundance. It could be for self-confidence. Pink could be lust, and red could be love. Blue can be mental clarity. Purple can be lust. It depends what people think. And then, you can etch into writing a petition, carving a petition into the candle, and then you're going in and timing it. So if I wanted prosperity, everybody loves money. So if I lit a green candle, I want to do that on a new moon or a waxing moon or even a full moon. And I write a petition what I want, and I'll use certain herbs and spices to enhance that spell, like coffee and cloves and things like this. And I'll let it burn. And watching how that flame burns, how does it move? How does the smoke move, and how long it takes? So if you take a 4-inch chime candle or taper candle, usually they have a 4-hour burn rate. So if your candle's taking 6 hours, then there's a problem. Or if it's done in like an hour and a half, which can happen, then you have a sense of, it could happen within a month. But then you're reading the wax as it burns down. When it's completely out, now you want to see which way is which. So if it's all flowing to the right, that's the future. If it's flowing to the left, it's the past. If it's flowing on top, that's the spiritual world. And if it's flowing down below, it's the real world. So if you want to do a prosperity spell, you kind of want it future, and then you want it in the real world. And then it depends on how far it stretches out. So if it's really close to the candle and that wax burns and it's done, then it's going to happen very, very soon. Put that in with the timing of the candle. And of course, you can get into planetary magic, is what planets are passing over at that time. So it can be complicated, but it can also be simple as well.
It's fascinating. I got a couple more things here. I know that you read tarot cards.
Yes.
So can you tell us about your favorite deck?
My favorite deck is actually the Spellcasters Tarot deck. I have about 12 different tarot decks. And I also, with each of my rings, I do what they call a chainsaw style, meaning I'm going to cut through the bullshit. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I want to tell you what you need to hear. And I stand by each of my rings, and they've never been proven wrong, which I'm proud of. But unlike many other tarot readers, here's a deck, and they'll lay out a few cards and call it a day. I use tarot with clarifiers of those tarot, then 5 oracle decks plus hand carved runes plus astro die to get that better full reading. And I take time with each client that I have. And then in addition, I teach a tarot boot camp, so that's kind of fun too.
So, is that online? Is that an online course?
Yeah, well, I teach it through email. People just follow me on Twitter, and I do all my readings on Twitter, like an instant message, a direct message. And that's how I do it. And where everybody else is charging, 40, 50, 60 bucks, I charge 10 bucks. Like literally that's it. Why? Because I do it for the working person. The ones who can't afford $40, $50 for a damn reading that doesn't tell them anything. I'm going to go so far in debt that it's going to make your spine shiver literally for 10 bucks. And it may not be what you want to hear, but it's going to be what you need to hear. And sometimes that happens right away. And it may be, I've had a few people a month down the road come back and says, dude, I'm sorry for being so mean to you when I had that ring. It just wasn't what I wanted to hear, but everything you said actually came to pass. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I could help. Right. So even if people don't believe in tarot reading, it's more like, would you rather be out 10 bucks or would you rather be out like 50, 60, $70?
Yeah. So you use all these other like qualifying items for every read that you do?
Yeah.
Like the runes and the oracle decks in it?
Exactly. I do my own spread, which is for any tarot readers that are out there. I use a 3 across, 1 crowning, and then I'll use clarifiers for those cards and even clarifiers of those clarifiers. Then I'll use 4 oracle decks in an arching format. So how I read it, whether it be a timeline or whether it be past or present, whatever, as far as a timeline, or it could be separate messages for each one. As an intuitive reader and an empath, I will get the sense of what it's trying to say. And then I try to put that into words. And whether it could be in parables, it could be poetic, or it could be just straight cut through all bullshit. This is how it is. So I put all those pieces of the puzzle together to give one message. No other tarot reader does that for that cheap.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a self-serving question real quick. Are you aware of any sets of tarot cards that come with a built-in oracle deck?
No, not that
Okay.
I know of. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I use all of them. Some only reuse oracle decks. Some only use tarot decks. But there might be a kit that may come together. I'm not really certain because I've got 12 tarot decks. I've got 6 or 7 oracle decks, including literally a Rebel Unicorn one that was sent to me. And literally, it's really cool because it literally cuts through the bullshit. It just tells you like it is. I was fascinated.
That's cool because, I mean, it's off topic or whatever, but I'm designing my own set of tarot cards, and I'm designing them with 3 arcana. And the 3rd arcana is the Vulgar Arcana, and it's basically a set of oracle cards that can be used with the other 2 arcanas. I had never heard of anyone doing that before, so I just kind of like, since the topic came up, I thought I would ask you.
No, I've actually never heard of it. That'd be kind of interesting.
I'll send you a link to what I have. They're not all released yet. I haven't shared all of them yet, but I'll send you a link to what I have and you can check them out.
Oh yeah, I think that'll be interesting. And once you get them up and going, I'll help you promote it as much as I can.
Yeah, cool, man. All right, so I know that you end your show like this often, so I wanted to give you the opportunity to give anyone that's at the beginning of their journey or just started down their path, what kind of advice would you give them?
Humility is the most important thing. You don't know it all. Don't pretend to know it all either. Constantly learn, and grow. Stay fluid in your beliefs. Don't remain static, and listen to people who have been doing it for decades. You don't have to take them at their word, but listen to what they have to say because they've been around the block for a very long time for a reason. So as long as you are willing to grow and to learn and to keep striving to become a better person overall and to help other witches and pagans regardless of race or creed or sexual orientation or whatever, that's what matters the most, because in the end, we're all in this together.
Nicely said. So I want to also open up the end of it here in case there's anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to, and also give you some space to plug your show. Where can we find it and where we can find you on? I know you're super active on Twitter, so I want you to throw out your Twitter handle and all of that stuff as well.
Oh, well, on Twitter, I have two. I have the official podcast one, which is at F2B Podcast. That's Foxtrot, the number 2 Bravo, and then podcast. And then you can also find the other one on Mjolnir Forge, which is Mjolnir like Thor's hammer. So Mike, Juliet, Oscar, Lima, November, India, Romeo, Foxtrot, Oscar, Romeo, Golf, Echo. So Mjolnir Forge. And that's my private one. Anybody can reach me on. And the podcast is Flatline to Beatline. You know what? It's got a rockin' intro. It got a lot of people interested. I talk to scholars and authors and bands and musicians and everything. And, give it a shot. I'm on 43 platforms, so take your pick. My hosting site is Castbox, so you can go and check it out there too. And give all the feedback and advice and suggestions that you have. And if you fall within the criteria, you want to come on my show, message me on Twitter and we'll work things out. I'm booked out all the way till June, but
jeez,
I can get you on.
So you do such a great job with your interviews and all that, and I just kind of wanted to give you a space to talk about yourself a little bit. Get to know you a little bit. I thought that was fair.
Oh yeah, I'm just me. I'm just out there trying to help people. That's all I'm trying to do. And because my slogan, besides "Let's do this," is break through the noise, and that's essentially what we're doing. And that's how I created the intro. Is just imagine a table, and on each end of the table is a piece of glass, and a bullet going through the glass on one end and coming out the other end. It's breaking through the noise, and I'm adding in advertisements of my own to promote my own podcast and Teespring store for Flatline to Beatline merchandise that I actually hand design every single thing. And so I do that, and it's in a dark satirical kind of thing. So I have a episode coming up Saturday with Laura Perry, who's a Minoan scholar of the Minoan culture and Minoan paganism. And it's going to be a constipation ad in order to promote my own thing. And the last one was on death. So I thought it would be kind of go in, and there'll be ones on tarot and taxes, and it could be on anything. But it's just a fun way to promote myself, and people laugh, and it's memorable. And I think that's what's crucial, is that they remember the podcast, and maybe somebody who makes it big one day can say, "Hey, I started out on that podcast, and if it wasn't for him starting it, I wouldn't be here." That's what matters to me.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, your intro does get me going. It reminds me of, I don't know if you were interested or even how old you were, but it reminds me of Stone Cold Steve Austin coming down to the to the ring, the WWF Attitude Era kind of business.
Oh, I'm 42 years old, so I remember watching wrestling way back when. So absolutely, that's that kind of mentality that I bring. I was given a piece of advice by a very world-renowned author, Siobhan Clark, and a good friend of mine, and she told me before I started podcasting, if you don't capture your audience within the first 30 seconds, you will lose them. So I knew that intro had to come out banging. And yes, in my beginning episodes, I didn't really have one. And then I created one, and then I left it, and then I meshed the two together, and I got that final piece. So it's like, there we go. People love it. It's banging, and it's there. And people love it, man. That's why some people say, "Hey, I didn't know if I was going to like your podcast," but when I heard that intro, I was like, "Oh shit, here we go." Yeah. I'm listening.
When you set your promo over a couple weeks ago, I would just put it on and be like, trying to get ready to go. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Night Shayde, thank you very much. And I'm going to edit this up and get it out tomorrow. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I had a really good time. Oh,
absolutely. And anytime you want to come on my show, man, you let me know, and I'll squeeze you in regardless. So a favor for a favor type of thing.
All right, man. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.